As a literary great once said, cocaine, side boob, choke her with a sea view. It's poetry, honestly. Now, as you know, my favourite form of literary criticism is to judge celebrities on their reading habits. Is that a normal thing to do? No. When Harry Styles wrote the song Little Freak, he was talking about me. Celebrity Book Club is back, baby. And interestingly, this is the first time I've ever had to make a part 2 to one of my Celebrity Book Club videos, because I previously read every book that Harry Styles has recommended, and then he recommended more. I guess you could say his reading list is not the same as it was. Thank you, thank you. So, in a recent interview with Rolling Stone magazine, Harry recommended these books. And I actually keep track of all of my research for my different reading challenges that I do using Milanote. And I'm buzzing because Milanote have very kindly sponsored today's video. Now, Milanote is a tool for organizing your creative projects, and look how beautiful it is. I love that it feels like a virtual version of a creative studio with sketches, references, ideas, notes, and arrows like all over the walls connecting the dots. Milanote is like that, but just entirely online. And so the amount of space you have to play with is infinite. It's so easy to move things around, and Milanote is a place to collect and organize all of your thoughts and ideas, put together checklists of what you need to tick off, visualize and gather information, and set a visual direction for a project. It feels like you have a bird's eye view over everything that's going on. You can also collaborate on a board by inviting colleagues, clients, or friends to work together, or just give you feedback. And starting a project is really easy too, as there's loads of great templates. As I said, I've been using Milanote to organize my reading challenges, and I love that it's so easy to drag and drop and customize so you can lay out your ideas in the way that makes most sense for your own brain. Looks amazing, right? And the best part is Milanote is available for free with no time limits. So I will leave a link down below. Sign up using the link in my description and start your next creative project and elevate it. Thank you so much, Milanote, for sponsoring this video. And so these are the books that I'm going to be reading. We have So You've Been Publicly Shamed by John Ronson, The Year of Magical Thinking by Queen Joan Didion, The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl, and The Architecture of Happiness by Alain de Botton. So let's get cracking. Harry Styles said this is the first book that he read twice. He's just like me for real. We're all Joan Didion stans in this house. It's not Harry's house, it's not Jack's house, it's Joan's house. She was like a literary Midas where everything she touched just turned to gold. I love her writing style so much. However, her life was unfortunately hit with huge tragedy because in 2003, her husband suddenly passed away. And at the time, her daughter was also unconscious in hospital with septic shock. And so this book, The Year of Magical Thinking, is all about the year following Joan Didion's husband's death and her experience of that grief in its many different layers as she just keeps replaying the events that occurred. Magical thinking kind of refers to the belief that you can influence the outcome of an event through actions that actually have no bearing on the circumstances. An example would be having like a lucky pair of underpants, knocking on wood so you don't jinx something, holding your breath as you go through a tunnel, all that kind of thing. In Joan Didion's case, it was not throwing away her husband's shoes. She couldn't bring herself to throw away his shoes because that would shatter the illusion that he was going to come back and that he would return and need them. If you've read a lot of her work, The Year of Magical Thinking is fascinating to read because what is usually distinctive about Joan Didion is the way that she writes with such clarity and this razor-sharp focus, but here her brain is just muddled. She is just consumed by grief, and it really shows in the writing style of this book in comparison to her others. It's repetitive, she's being genuinely delusional and kind of insane, and it is so vulnerable as a writer to let us into that moment in your very personal life. And so this is such a powerful time capsule of that time in her life. However, what I will say is Joan Didion is the ultimate name dropper. You will have to get a dustpan and brush to just like pick up all the names off the floor. I did find that kind of exhausting in this book, but I guess they were just the people that she knew, so we can't hold it against her. Also, it's the way she's like, by the way, I'm rich. Constantly. So constantly. Maybe Joan Didion walked so Paris Hilton could run. I don't know. I think if you're at a point in your life where you're like struggling to come to terms with grief, this could be a really great book for you to read. I think it could really resonate with you. If you're not going through that, it's still impactful, but I don't know if it will hit you as hard. It's still good, but despite this being Joan Didion's probably most famous book, this really isn't my favorite of hers. I love Play As It Lays, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, her books about the art of writing. It wasn't my favourite of her works, but to be honest with you, I would read Joan Didion's shopping list. So catch me in Barnes & Noble when they decide to publish that. And on to the next book. It's 1 AM and I just finished this book, but we're going to talk about it now so I can make a joke about the fact that we're late night talking. Hey, there it is. Was it worth it? So you may notice a bit of a running theme here. That a lot of these books are very existential and asking big questions. You know, what is the meaning of life? How do we find hope in times of despair? Did Harry Styles spit on Chris Pine at the Venice Film Festival? All important questions. And things that keep me up at night. Quite literally, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, this is Man's Search for Meaning. And this book is split into 2 parts. The first part chronicles his experience as a prisoner of war in a Nazi concentration camp. And then the second part is kind of his manifesto, his theory of logotherapy, which to my surprise was not just hitting someone around the head with the McDonald's M, not that kind of logo. Logos is actually Greek for meaning. And the theory behind logotherapy is basically that the main human drive is not the pursuit of pleasure, but the pursuit of something meaningful. So when we encounter the antithesis of pleasure, which would be suffering, and when that suffering is unavoidable, we can still find meaning. And finding that meaning for existing is what will make you mentally strong enough to survive. Harry Styles said he found this incredibly moving, and I think that is the perfect word for this book. However, the rest of the book is generally just a little bit slow and dull. I didn't love the writing style here. The logotherapy section really isn't very engaging at all, and it's just full of jargon which didn't really feel appropriate for this kind of book. Also, I know that it's completely ridiculous to compare Holocaust narratives, but I do think that the writing and storytelling in this book isn't as strong as in other books, which I would be quicker to recommend. So to give you 2 examples, I would recommend Night by Elie Wiesel and also Mouse by Art Spiegelman. Like, if you're gonna pick up one, or if you're gonna pick up one first, I would recommend one of those 2 instead. But yes, that is Man's Search for Meaning, and this continues this man's search for a book that he loves in this video, because I'm still getting there, but I'm holding out hope. But first, I'm going to bed. So I'll see you when I finish another book. Harry Styles may have starred in Don't Worry Darling, but I'm starting to get worried, darling. So far, all of these books have been so mid for me. Like, they're not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not great either. They're not these like engaging masterpieces. They're just average. The 3-star books are 3-star booking right now. However, this right here is the least interesting for me so far, personally. And we're falling into 2-star category right now. This is The Architecture of Happiness by Alain de Botton, who I always find frustrating as a writer because I feel like there's always something missing. And this book is about how our environment can impact our happiness or our misery, which I feel like is just obvious. So he talks about things like the street that we live on, or the building that we're in, all the way down to the chairs that we have, maybe even the coasters in our homes, which is like, okay, cool, fair enough. And there's lots of pictures, which I, for one, appreciated. It's been a while since I read a book with pictures, so this was a treat. Now, would this book be interesting if you design chairs for a living? Yes, I think so. Was it interesting for me as someone who has lived in rented apartments for the last, like, 6 years and doesn't own a single piece of their own furniture? Yeah, not especially. I did not really find this that fascinating. To me, to be honest, this just felt like rich people nonsense. Because I feel like most of us just go to IKEA and buy what we can afford, right? Most people don't have the luxury to think about architecture and interior design in this way. Some of us are living La Vida Broca, Alain de Botton. I feel like I need to put an ad in the local newspaper saying, missing the point of this book. If found, please return to me. Urgently. There were occasional sections that I enjoyed, but when you have to specify that you occasionally enjoyed part of a book, it's not a good sign. I think he makes pretty sweeping statements here and is just generally quite annoying as a writer. And I'm sorry about it. I know Harry Styles said treat people with kindness, but he did not say anything about books. I did not enjoy this at all, but equally I'm not the target audience for this book. So I need to stop letting Harry Styles convince me to read Alain de Botton's writing. This is the 2nd time, and I've hated it both times. So this just is not for me. Not for me at all. Hopefully the next book will be. Please. Please let the next book be good. Oh, Harry Styles, you are killing me here. The Underground Railroad is one of the most frustrating books I have ever read because it has so much potential and the worst execution. It's frustrating because it's a narrative about the slave trade, which is of course so hugely important and vital to be depicted in literature. However, the writing style is, in my opinion, horrible. The style is very much giving GCSE English. It's like, they did this, then they did that, then they did this, then they did that. Like, you're always being held at arm's length from the characters, and I don't know why. This could have been so much better if it had been written in the first person. So Colson Whitehead basically imagines what it would have been like if the Underground Railroad had actually been a physical locomotive that picked up people escaping from their captors. It's just unfortunate that none of the characters in this book are developed at all. It's like you had a seed and you had a plant pot filled with soil and nutrients and a watering can ready, and you just tossed it over your shoulder instead. And now the seed is just lying on the cold, hard ground. One of the characters disappears for like half the book, and it's not even noticeable because they didn't really have a personality to start with. Like, he goes missing, but there's nothing to miss. I didn't miss him. All I'm missing is the time that I spent reading this. The only reason for this that I can think of is that maybe the author just got complacent, that we would just automatically root for these characters because of the horrible, awful situation that they're in. And of course we do to a certain extent, but for 400 pages? Come on now, I'm gonna need a little bit more than that. I'm wearing my Spice Girls t-shirt because you needed to spice this up. Could we maybe one time hear how a character is feeling? Just once? Is that too much to ask for? This book reads like a flowchart of like, this happened, this happened, this happened. And so it's basically this one long cat and mouse chase with just no depth or development at all. I'm sorry, I hate the execution of this book so much. But what do I know? Because it won the Pulitzer Prize, so maybe I'm just wrong. And now I have one more book left to read, and I'm hoping that it's going to change the course of these reviews, because so far we've been going in one direction, and that direction is down. We've been going downhill rapidly, snowballing. It's not looking good, Bev. It's not looking good. Now, the final book that Harry Styles recommended is this one, So You've Been Publicly Shamed. This is by Jon Ronson, and I enjoyed this one. I liked this one. Again, like some of the others, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great, but at least Harry's recommendations are consistent. I don't know what else to say. This book is interesting for me because it's one of the first useful analyses of cancel culture that I've seen. Jon Ronson, who is the author, is a fantastic writer. I love his books. And I love how he doesn't position himself as an expert on these topics straight away, but instead he's like a curious investigator who's gonna take us along for a journey, meeting people, having experiences, and then writing about them. And so he grapples with ideas, he thinks things through, he picks them apart, and I like that a lot. It feels more like an investigation. So he'll take you on a journey as he discovers more about a particular topic, and in this case it was public shaming, especially through the lens of social media. Now, this book was written in 2015, so you've got to bear that in mind that already it is kind of a little bit outdated. But it's cool. He chats with people who had at the time experienced various forms of public shaming. So you have journalists who were exposed for plagiarism, you have someone who tweeted this racist joke and then boarded a flight and did not realize until they landed that the whole time they'd been in the air they were #1 trending on Twitter. That's crazy. So he just has these really interesting little case studies. And you then have people who did quite innocent things and they were misconstrued on social media, which ended up in them being like fired from their jobs and stuff because of the mob mentality of Twitter users. And Jon Ronson kind of studies why cancelling other people makes us feel virtuous. But like I said, it was all written kind of pre-cancel culture discourse, so he doesn't use the word cancel, he uses the word shame. So it's weird because it's modern but also already outdated, and I would love to see a part 2 to this if Jon Ronson would like to do that, where he investigates people like J.K. Rowling or influencer culture. I would love to see him tackle what we currently think of as cancel culture too. There are some random tangents that kind of make the book feel less cohesive, but it's a pretty good introduction to the idea of internet mob mentality from like a theoretical, philosophical standpoint. So this one was pretty cool, I think. So I feel that this was a little bit of a flop, a minor flop, but it's one flop, not a flop era, it's fine. These books, like averaged out, are just all being around 3 stars. Nothing exceptional, nothing catastrophic, it was so mid. But thanks for watching, I guess. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and you can subscribe for more from me. Massive shout out, of course, to Mila Note for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it. Link is down below. And until next time, have a wonderful day. All the best, stay in touch, and I'll catch you very soon. Bye-bye.